the India debate here at Davos, the World Economic Forum 2012. Many Indians believe that India is a positive story, and as that plays out, the start of the year might have brought in some serious work from the government's end and perhaps even change in sentiment. I've got a very special panel, all Indians you're familiar with a perspective on India at Davos. I'll start with Adi Godrej. You believe that the 1st of Jan has actually brought a new year for the Indian economy. How?
Very definitely. I think the sentiment has changed. Even earlier I felt that the reality was much better than the sentiment. But after the 1st of January, many things have changed. Government announced a couple of things like 100% foreign direct investment in single brand retail. The stock markets have taken a turn. The rupee has appreciated. It's now above 50, 49, 70, as I heard. And general sentiment seems to have changed. I see some of the results have been quite good.
Right. And if we go by what the Commerce Minister told me just a couple of hours ago, he believes that it's just a matter of a few months that FDI multi-brand should get a stamp.
Yes, I'm sure. And I think allowing foreign airlines to invest in the aviation sector, if we can get the companies bill and the direct tax code.
Right.
But the most important thing, Shirley, is the goods and services tax. Unfortunately, there still isn't political alignment on that.
And you've been an advocate for that for some time now.
If we can do that, then despite whatever happens in the Eurozone, India could grow at above 9%.
Okay, but what's woken up the giants, so to speak? Hemant, if you just look at all these months of going through what was a gloomy sentiment on headlines because of scams, scandals, not that we can wish them away, but what's changed suddenly that things are falling in place?
I think all of us tend to overreact. Okay, when India is shining, then there's no sign of any cloud anywhere. And when there is doom, then we tend to overreact and do the same thing like we do with our cricket team. We've seen our results improve all across of the businesses that we're doing. We've seen that as Europe tends to stumble its way towards a solution, some of the risk appetite of foreign investors is coming back. The stock markets are doing well. The order books are strong. And our companies in Germany are doing fine. Our companies in Italy are doing fine. And I personally don't see any reason for gloom and doom, and which is one of the reasons why I'm not attending many of the gloom and doom sessions here.
Really? Does that mean you walk off from what makes you feel a bit too negative?
No, I don't walk off, but Davos has got two parts to it. One is all the stuff that we are hearing about Eurozone, bankers' salaries, capitalism, the future of the political world and so on. And there's another part of Davos which is enlightening and uplifting.
True.
So
I overheard a CEO say that I'm not coming for the next 3 years, at least till there's a new subject apart from the euro. Shivinder Singh, just to know whether the sentiment side, are we sometimes our own enemies? We tend to bring ourselves too low and not look for what we can try and do in terms of rescuing a situation.
Well, I do believe, I think partly what Mr. Godrej and Hemant has said, that we get carried away on both sides. When it starts going a little bad, we talk so much about it and make such a big deal about it that I actually start feeling bad about it. And then the bad carries on for a while, and then you're looking for any ray of hope, and then you hang on to that for all good hope, and then life starts becoming brighter because you're tired of feeling sad.
Yeah.
So I do think we tend to go to extremes. I mean, there's no debate on the fact that last year has been difficult. But I think Indian industry has the capability to pull out and come out with some kind of magic and pull out of it every time. And I think in the whole process, we actually get stronger. So I don't see it as a negative side at all.
Find yourself having to answer or be answerable as a CEO on what is going on the governance front in India. Is that what happened to most of you at WEF?
Clearly, that's the biggest doubt that people have. They buy the rest of the India story.
Yeah. Okay, Vikas, how was your experience? How many people did you have to explain that you are not the man who's going to take the call? The Prime Minister has a job to do.
Well, obviously, it's not. I mean, India is rated as one of the most corrupt, governments in the world. But that aside, I would say that despite all that, the Indian entrepreneurs able to project a great picture. So I think, people here appreciate the fact that whatever is happening despite the government, not because of the government. So I would say that India is actually in a situation where we are inducing pain ourselves. There is really lesser or very little pain in the economy per se. If we can look beyond that, then I think we have a far better picture to look at.
Mr. Godrej, this time, large number of young people have been inducted into the World Economic Forum fold. You know, global shapers, young leaders have existed. Your daughter herself is a part of that. Do you think in some ways people are recognizing the leadership qualities of young Indians, their ability to be risk takers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the great story in India. If you look at the young, their thinking, their passion, their desire to work over a 10-year period in terms of planning, I think it's all terrific. And I think in the next decade, when the young in India take over, whether in politics, whether in business, I think India will have changed dramatically. So I'm very confident of the young Indians driving India forward very strongly.
Yeah, you know, Hemant, I want to come back to you with the whole demographic dividend, which many introspect whether it's a disaster, could be a disaster. But how can we get away from the idea that at the end of the day, we're a fantastic market? I mean, we are so many consumers together. Many of them are innovators in their own right. So the demographic story is still a play that we should not discount just yet.
I think we actually should. Okay, I'm being contrarian over here. If there's something that is limiting growth at Mahindra just now, okay, is the lack of the ability to find enough trained people. We talk about educational institutions which are fantastic, the elite ones are great, but when we want to find 5,000 engineers to put into our engineering services, you can't find them. I think India can capitalize on it, but we need to take action very quickly.
Because
otherwise,
it's a long-term piece, it doesn't happen overnight.
In the corporate world, you have to compete for capital.
Yeah.
One division competes for capital against the other, and India is competing against Brazil, Mexico, China,
and no
Russia.
capital can compete against each other without the existence of talent, which is where the debate actually pivoted this time at WEF, Sanjeev. If you look at it, they said, let's get away from capital, let's talk about talent. Are we doing enough? I mean, given that you have a financial services business, you do need intellect, you need people to be pushy, get the sales out there. Are you facing challenges too?
Clearly there are challenges with the quality of people.
Yeah.
So for example, if I take our insurance business, we have 12,000 sales managers that manage 120,000 agents. Now training those numbers is a huge challenge. So we have training schools across the country. We do a huge amount of online training. So what you're really looking for when you're hiring somebody now is attitude, not necessarily what he has studied. Because if he has the right attitude with the right training,
be quick learners.
Then they would be quick learners.
Because, you know, India and China has often been looked at from the labor point of view as a story worth looking at, not just from an infrastructure point, but pure construction, engineers, architects, etc. India seems to be always short of it, and I'm sure you experienced that. Tell us a little bit about how that bridge could be built.
You know, we have a huge shortage of architects, engineers. Leave alone architects and engineers, we have a huge shortage of labor and skilled labor. We have given a contract to Samsung, and they in turn have brought in Indian labor from Dubai, because that's where the Indian skilled labor is. So imagine, I mean, you know, we got to import Indian labor from Dubai because we need that skill set. So why can't we have institutions which would, you know, promote skill development in India?
Mr. Godrej, what is it that's stopping us from letting the education sector get unleashed in India? I mean, we can't deny that, you know, we are low on the indices when it comes to basic human needs.
Oh, absolutely. You talked about the issue. I believe there's no unemployment in India, just unemployability. And this new task force for training and skill development, where 500 million people are to receive this kind of training. And CII is very active in that. It's going to be a collaboration between the government, the private sector. I think companies should put a lot of effort on training and skill development, both within the company and as CSR efforts.
But I suppose from their need basis, that's probably the only option. Shivinder, how do you respond to the need to invest in research and development? I mean, you've been, you know, doing businesses where you would need people to spend some time looking at new scientific methods, how to improve the quality of healthcare in the country. Are we doing enough on R&D? Is the government giving you enough support on that?
Well, I think R&D you have to look at in both sides. I think one is manufacturing, the other is services. R&D and service really is about innovation more than R&D per se.
Sure.
But I think coming back to what Mr. Godrej said, I think the conversation earlier about the demographic dividend, I do fundamentally believe that we have the opportunity to make it a demographic dividend. But like anything else, two sides of the coin, we can actually make it a disaster.
And are we making it one? Would you agree with Mr. Luthra?
It pivots on education. It pivots on the fact that can you generate enough people to actually leverage that volume? In every sector that we look at, whether it's engineering or it's IT or it's medicine or it's nursing, we are short of talent. And that's just a simple quantity issue. We have also a serious quality issue. I mean, we are hiring nurses and doctors at the junior level. One is to get the volume that you're looking for, but they also to get the quality that they actually can do something at start. So, like Sanjeev said, you have to go back and retrain them.
Part of the India story, besides its people, is obviously every one of you's ability to generate higher margins. People love this place because they can get back more from every penny that they invest. Now, in that sense, we are debating at the Davos Forum whether capitalism should come with compassion, whether progress should come with parity. Do you think India is in a position right now to even debate that and participate in a story like that? Sanjeev, let's start with you.
Sure it is, and it needs to be if it's not. I think capitalism itself is getting redefined, right? So you can't just look at one set of stakeholders. You start off, of course, your basic capitalism looked at your customers, your employees, and your shareholders. You need to look at the society around you as well. And if you see large sustainable businesses have done that much before it became a buzzword to have capitalism with a certain amount of social side to it. And but you can't separate it out. So if you're training a whole bunch of people and if you have a turnover of 30-40% over there, they are going and doing other things. At the same time, looking at the immediate society around you, I think these are activities which many companies are doing, and there are others who, if they are not, they will need to do it if you have to build a sustainable business.
What's conscious capitalism to you, Hemant?
I think the way Mahindra is practicing it is, and I'm not making a plug for the company, but I'm very proud of the way they're handling it. I don't think the two can be separated as, you have to have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Okay. If you are committed to capitalism and it's going to get the best return that you want for your shareholders, your people must give in not just as a wage that they're doing, but they must give with passion. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you treat them right, they're going to give with passion. If they're going to make the extra effort to make sure that the product is right, they're going to make sure extra effort to make sure the quality is right. And I think the two go hand in hand. So to me, it's not a debate. The two just have to complement each other.
On a pure capitalism point of view, just looking at the way the Indian market is, because you do see the next few years, despite challenges of your land bill, difficulty in getting loans for sectors like construction, etc., we will still be better off in terms of returns to investors?
See, I feel we now need to look at not shareholders but stakeholders. And the minute you look at stakeholders, you're going to look at everyone involved. You're going to look at a person who owns land, people who work with you, labor, anyone. So I think you have to have a inclusive growth, and that probably will change the way capitalism is going to be looked upon going into the future.
Mr. Godrej, I would wonder, as a journalist, that why does everyone in India Inc. need to come to Davos to listen to capitalism and being conscious about how you sort of do business, when back home issues like Lokpal, the kind of unrest among the social sector, all of them in their heart to heart are raising the very same issues. I mean, somewhere we feel there's a discord of where we're learning our lessons.
Of course, these issues are being raised across the world. But I like to call the system free enterprise. I like to avoid the word capitalism. Free enterprise with inclusiveness. And every time we paid emphasis on inclusiveness, whether it's a corporation, whether it's the country, I think we have gained in terms of economic growth. This adds to economic growth. It's not a cost of free enterprise to my mind.
Yeah.
So I think we should be very strongly supportive in a country like India of more and more free enterprise with inclusiveness.
Right.
And you were talking about the corruption issue. To me, this corruption issue has been raised at the right time. It will be short-term pain. We are all going through this short-term pain because decision-making is slow, etc. But it will be tremendous long-term gain.
Yeah. In the Twitter world, this time at the Davos Forum, the one word that has trended the most is the word social. Shivinder, do you think social unrest could be the biggest challenge of corporate sector across the world, including India, in the years ahead?
Well, I don't think it's a challenge just for the corporate sector. I think any economy, any country, that's the one thing that they don't want to get to.
Yeah.
And just the starting of that or the bubbling of that actually signals the fact that there is a certain amount of exhaustion in patience for people to just wait for what they believe is their right and what the government has preached for so long that they're expected to be provided. So I don't think it's only a corporate sector pain. It's a nightmare for any country. And I think smart leaders need to recognize it when it starts bubbling, when you start hearing whispers about it, rather than waiting for a reaction when it becomes too late.
Mr. Godrej, we know so many of your friends and within the corporate sector want to invest, which are obviously in sensitive areas. Now this time at Davos, most people have said, why doesn't India open up its resources? Let us exploit the coal that we sit on. Let us exploit the iron ore that we sit on. But large number of projects are actually on hold at the moment for that very reason. The twins not going to meet anywhere?
No, of course it should. And I think it's already started. I think clearly coal production is back on the growth front. I think you're absolutely right. We must get our resources moving, but we must also be very clear that we will do it in a sustainable manner.
Yeah.
The environment must be taken care of. We must leverage science and technology where we do both. It's not either or. It's both. We must develop our mineral resources very strongly and take care of the environment. And we must
have better
leverage science and
rehabilitation
technology.
plans for people.
Yes, that can be worked out. If we do it sensibly, if we do it with a sense of fairness and determination, it can be done. And I think it's moving now. The Environment Ministry has cleared a lot of coal projects now, and I see it moving forward very rapidly.
See, all of you are, of course, certainly optimistic, but, you know, there is plenty to be done. Things are turning around. But 2 years from now, we're going to have general elections in India. Clearly, you all are factoring that in. What are your expectations, you know, in terms of the reform story? And more importantly, does India Inc. and the rest of India have a choice when it comes to selecting the government? Vikas, we'll start with you.
Well, you know, I think the politicians should be very clear that their report cards are going to be seen in the next 2 years. So they better buck up. And, you know...
You mean they're empty so far?
I don't know that. I mean, and I'd rather not comment. Let the entire term get over and then we decide who fails or who passes. But I would clearly see them bucking up because they really need to do that. And, you know, they are the drivers. We probably would put the fuel in, but at the end of the day, they are the policy makers. We can influence them to make policies around growth, around, you know, job creation and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, they are the ones who are to take action. So I guess they really need to know what people are looking at and what people want and should perform.
Sanjeev, you, Mr. Godrej, even him, you've seen what's happened in Maharashtra. Another example of a great story that could have been much better, but actually has just given up everything to the neighboring Gujarat.
Sure.
You know, this is part of the same government story. I mean, 2 years from now, when general elections happen again, what are industrialists like you going to say to your very own local governments as well about how they've got a huge opportunity just let go?
See, people are clearly more and more voting for performance over casteism, religion, or just status quo.
Yeah.
And for every Maharashtra, you have a Gujarat, and you have many other states that we know of, whether Bihar, etc., etc.
Yes.
So, rather than seeing each one of us as businessmen or industrialists, I think if each one of us as a citizen casts our
And a
vote
voter, yeah.
and believes that we can make a difference, because I think each one of our votes will make a difference, we will hopefully see that we elect those that are accountable, that are transparent, and that lead by action.
For this to happen, Shivinder, India Inc. has to be in town, in India, to vote on the day of voting.
But I don't think that's an issue. I actually find more and more people getting there and making it happen. I think, and to your earlier comment about 2 years from now, general elections, I think 2 and a half years is very far away. I actually hope and believe that with some of the elections happening at the state level now, and depending on the outcome of that, the mood should change very dramatically. And to Vikas's point, over the next 2 years, we can actually buck up and actually catch up on the scorecard, provided that this state election actually give the impetus to the government
And it's a
to get going.
long catch up, right? Mr. Luthra, 6 years have gone by for the same government.
I have a contrarian view on this. Okay, I don't think we will be blessed with a party with a simple majority. We will have to live with alliances. And I think we need to take a look at how we have the whole electoral system in India works. I have two specific suggestions. Okay. One is that state elections somehow, and I'm not a political scientist, must be made coterminous with national elections, because otherwise we have elections all the time and we are subject to populist pressures, okay, every 2 years, not every 5. Okay. Second, I don't think we can afford the luxury of the government that we have just now, in the shape and form that we have just now, For us to recover and catch up with the rest of the world, we'll need a presidential form of government where a president gets elected and chooses what Italy has been able to do just now. You get a real powerful bureaucrat, Monti, and say that we have to throw out the last prime minister and let's get our act together. These are constitutional changes, but I am not optimistic about a single party coming back to power again.
I'll just take final comments, but before I do that, one political question to you. Largely because, you know, in this country today, everybody looks up to the Prime Minister and we all love him because he's such a clean man, he's a great economist. But he's just not a great politician. Does that bother India Inc. just way too much now?
It's true that if we had taken some decision, for example, say 51% investment in multi-brand retail, it should have been taken before Parliament started. It wouldn't have got into any difficulty. So some kind of timing, some kind of political handling, I think you must clearly combine politics. The other thing is the government should reach out to the opposition. The government shouldn't expect the opposition merely to support anything which is economically good. They should reach out to them, and that means also being less critical in the states. So I feel, unfortunately, the opposition and the government have got it against each other far too much for the economic agenda to go forward.
Okay, let's get some final comments then. The one thing that you will tell Prime Minister today.
I've already said that all, which is that there is a golden moment you can strike now. Okay, the risk appetite has come back. Okay, and the second thing I would tell the Prime Minister today is that ask your political masters, okay, to either, you know what, in terms of take action or let me go. I'm using...
The phrase political masters gives us a lot to think about anyway. Okay, Vikas, do you think, you've talked about despite the government, what is that one picture of India despite the government that will continue to sell a WEF?
Everything that's happening until today, I would say, is despite the government, and that probably is a clear story. What I would want to tell the Prime Minister is, you know, we need a leader, a single leader who can drive the country to a particular focus, and I think he is the man. You rightly said he's got the talent, he's got the knowledge, and you know, people love him. So I guess he should really pull it through.
What do you think, Shivinder? Should it be people power, push for demographic dividend?
Now, the comment to the Prime Minister would be, India has the opportunity, let's seize it.
And that's something you've been saying for 10 years now, by the way. Sanjeev.
Okay, I'm going to be critical over here to say 6 years has been long enough, not seen enough action. We need somebody different to act.
That's a great point to end. Well, we've got a very interesting debate out here on ET Now. The pulse is positive, but it comes with caveats. Caveats what? That includes coalition governments, the crisis, and just good karma. On that point, it's a wrap on the debate. Stay with ET Now.